Welcome back, everybody, to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I'm your host, Jason Verlinde, the publisher of the Fretboard Journal magazine. Are you all getting the Fretboard Journal magazine? I sure hope you are. This is our 20th year. Our 57th issue is going to be mailing in just about a week. And in about a week as well, we've got our Fretboard Summit taking place in Chicago at the Old Town School of Folk Music. This year's summit is going to be one for the record books. We've got Lyle Lovett. We've got Dave Hill, who we just had on the podcast. We've got Ella Feingold, who's on this podcast, and Charlie Hunter and Jonathan Stout, and so many other folks you've heard me interview, as well as folks from the magazine itself, as well as some of our favorite dealers, collectors, historians, all sharing their knowledge. It's a weekend like no other, and I would love to see you there. And as if all of the programming weren't enough, we are throwing one of the world's largest luthiery guitar gear expos around. This is taking place within the summit. You do not need to attend all the workshops and concerts to go guitar shopping. We have around 80 luthiers and pedal makers and amp builders, all showcasing their wares throughout the Old Town School of Folk Music campus. And one of our exhibitors is today's guest, Adrian Bagale of Northfield Mandolins. Now, we'll put a little asterisk next to that word mandolins because he's about to unveil something that is a bit of a departure for their brand, and we hear all about it. Now, Adrian, in addition to making beautiful mandolins, happens to be one of the most interesting folks in the gear industry. What he has done with Northfield and how he has split the workshops between Asia and the United States is really something that I think you will all be interested in. It's incredible food for thought. Of course, we also have to talk about tariffs and all the stuff going on in the world. But Adrian is just one of the most forward-thinking gear makers around, and I loved getting his insights. Now, I will also say I am incredibly flattered that Adrian and so many other instrument makers are building unique and brand new instruments for our Fretboard Summit. So I hope you all can come, or tell your friends in the Midwest to come. Even if you just come for a day, buy a $30 guitar show pass. You can go guitar shopping all day long, meet many of these makers. You're going to get your hands on all sorts of new and prototype instruments from brands large and small, and you will have an absolute blast. You can go to fretboardsummit.org to register for that. We also sell tickets at the door, so I would love to see you all there. And I hope you enjoy hearing the Northfield story. I'm so glad we did this interview. I learned so much. This was one of the most insightful talks I've had in years, and I hope you all agree. Adrian, welcome finally to the Fretboard Journal podcast. You've been a staple at our Fretboard Summit. You've been in the Fretboard Journal magazine. We finally got you on the show.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Good to be here with you.
You have a very unique business model in the world of fretted instruments with how you do instruments. And that's just talking about Northfield. Yeah. Can you just give us the umbrella statement of all the different projects you currently have going on?
All right. In the Northfield sphere?
Yeah, and then beyond.
And beyond? Let's see. In Northfield, we, like you just said, we've got a kind of a complex set of products, variables, teams, locations, this sort of plethora of things by our own design, and some of which are, problems that we didn't know we needed to create for ourselves, and then, solutions that we chased into becoming items, if that makes any sense. I mean, we have two shops. We're a small business, but with an international footprint, and that keeps things very interesting. Especially in a year like 2025. Yeah. So, a lot of people know the story about Northfield, but just for the sake that they don't, that maybe people, don't. We've been around for almost 20 years. we started as a workshop in Qingdao, which is northern China. When I lived there, having come off of a rigorous job of product development for Saga Musical Instruments and a variety of other companies at the same time, making fretted instruments and all of the accessories, from cases to bone nuts to strings and everything. And so that landed me in northern China. I lived there for 3 years, and at the end of that, decided, like, I really just want to do one thing and do it really well. And there were a few people that were interested in doing that with me, one from Nagoya, Japan, and one from the area that I was living from in Shandong province, just outside of the city where I was living. And we all agreed that mandolins were the thing that really excited us the most. They were the most challenging of anything we did, especially building an F5 mandolin, which I think many instrument builders would agree is kind of up there at the top of making it hard on yourself and others. And so we really stuck at that, and we built these instruments for a couple years, kind of heated our little workshop on the defects for, literally in the furnace for a couple years before ever selling one, and then released our instruments at the International Bluegrass Music Show there, the IBMA in Nashville, in the fall of 2009. I think 8 or 9. Yeah, one of those two. And then subsequently, a couple years later, ended up building an entire shop in Michigan, where I moved home to, where all these materials were coming from to build the mandolins. And then sort of like in stages, building first an assembly shop, then full manufacturing, and then into building an entire kind of lineup of mandolin family instruments. And that was in about 2012. And then in 2017, it expanded again into a bigger workshop in this area. So now we have this sort of small little campus in Marshall, Michigan. And now we make instruments in both places, 24 hours a day, two different, totally 12-hour difference in the time. We make different instruments, but all within the mandolin family. Until 2 years ago, we started making some archtop acoustic guitars, which I think we debuted at the Fretboard Summit a month after we released them. We did this like July 9th batch of 4 different instruments, none of which were an F5, which people thought was kind of hilarious that we used the July 9th batch to do something. But that's just in our ethos to do some weird things. And now we've sort of, in the last couple of years, gotten really experimental in electric instruments, electric octave mandolins. We've worked with a lot of really cool players that are stepping outside and definitely genre hopping. And we've kind of felt a lot of cool synergy and collaboration with the sort of coinciding, improvisational music. So either the electric side, I guess you could say, improv-based jam band, if you want to say that. I know people kind of cringe when you start naming these things, but also the relative bluegrass component, which is sort of people like to refer to it as jam grass. All bluegrass music is always improv, right? There's always a form to the tune, and then breaks that everybody takes, which are the improv parts of the solos. And we've found that our electric instruments have really just sort of met at the intersection of these kinds of musics, and live music is bigger and more popular than ever. And now we're continuing on that journey. And so one thing has led into another. And now I'm sitting here with some hollow body electric guitars to my left, which you are totally responsible, whether or not you realize, going to the Fretboard Summit 4 years in a row, or about to go for the 4th year, definitely influenced what it is that was going through my head. Every time we were the only mandolin company to come and show our wares, I picked up on something else. So now our product line, if you want to call it that, our family of instruments is sort of ever expanding and maybe headed in a direction that people might have not seen coming, but I certainly did. If I go even further back, I started as a wannabe jazz guitarist growing up in Rochester, New York. My family went to Eastman School of Music. Jazz was the center of our universe, and specifically electric guitar in jazz. My dad's a percussionist, played all the instruments. The only thing he didn't play was guitar, which is probably why I gravitated to it. That and my little brother started playing guitar, and I was like, I need to do that. So this is an authentic sort of homecoming in my own life. But it's like I said a minute ago, making problems for yourself that you didn't realize would be challenges, and then going after it. And this has been in development. These things have been in development for a couple of years. So there's Northfield in a nutshell. Did that make any sense at all?
It made sense. And I love that, there's sort of this natural growth, literally, where you started with an F5 and then octave mandolins you start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now you're just making a guitar. So,
it's every one of these things has been not by business design.
Yeah.
This is you hear the term like reluctant businessman, that these kinds of things, a reluctant business person. Yeah, that's me. I never took any business classes. I never found anything except for a way into, the larger music industry because I was a player and because I was fascinated with the way that things worked, and I just wanted to know if it was possible that we could make things that I'd want to play, and that we could ultimately maybe affect music somehow by creating instruments that people play new music on. And that's worked out. It's all been completely instinctual. Like, we wanted to do the octave mandolins because I was becoming fascinated with players like Tim O'Brien and Sarah Jarosz that were kind of rewriting, coming from a bluegrass background, rewriting the way you could sing and play the mandolin. And I was into singing and still am, and very much into the lower register because I was coming naturally from the guitar world, and watching things like that happen, and just watching what they were playing and realizing, oh no, they're not playing the same voicings. Oh no, they're actually, catering to their vocal range and to these creative ideas that they were having, vocally, and that just, it turned all of us on to like, hey, this is another way to make an A-stringed instrument, available and with validity. It was current. There was, and it still is. Actually, stepping into the octave mandolin side of things has really produced this resource of creative energy that we've needed to withstand all these weird global issues that we've been confronted with. It's a way to make new music on new instruments. And there had not been a lot of development in the octave mandolin. It's like the newcomer to the family. Mm-hmm. So there was a new avenue. It was a new way to go forward. And at this point, we have developed and are producing a family of octave mandolins, an entire family of various octave instruments, octave mandolin instruments. And it's not what we, immediately intended, but after we went, it was like, there should be a short scale version of this, or, this would be really cool to electrify this thing. I bought an old Les Paul Junior, and when I picked it up and started playing it, I realized like this would be such a cool octave mandolin. And then that took me down another rabbit hole. And then, we got into, visiting with people in Scandinavia who were playing tenor guitar and a lot of sittern. and really seeing that, like, the octave mandolin voice tuned in this way, but as a flat top instrument gives us this sound for Scandinavian music. And so I got to connect with Roger, I think is how he says, Talrath of Vassen, who's like a huge, hero in music for all of us, and make an instrument for him, and then see that kind of has legs in that way. And so the octave mandolin thing, it's a funny way to sort of step outside of sort of the conventional F5 and A5 style, and get us into a register where it just makes sense that we would keep going and get into some 6-stringed instruments. It's a very weird roundabout way to end up where I started, but through another pathway.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people from the guitar side of things may be surprised by just how large the mandolin market is, just as F5s, A5s, but how big is this octave mandolin? Now you've got this whole suite of instruments and all these variations. Like, are there enough people wanting all the different flavors to keep it going? Is it a big part of your business?
Yes, surprisingly.
Okay.
Surprisingly fast growing part of the business too. I mean, okay, so you get into these things and you make instruments and you make you create a following, right? And you hope that you do inside of your brand and the message and what you're up to. There was a moment where it seemed like we needed to, let's expand the family of instruments. And the obvious thing, especially where we were at the moment, was to get into things like, a mandola, or making other types of mandolin instruments. And it just seemed like, world was sort of begging for an octave that just wasn't available. And the ones that wanted it the most were was the audience that we were already working with. And, when you build an instrument that you can genuinely say, this is a lifetime instrument. Like we made this F5, so it will last. If it doesn't burn up in a house fire or get lost in a flood or something like that, this thing will last forever. So you get to the point where you're just like, well, we've made this thing, it will last forever. Like, okay, but we have this company built up, and now what are we going to do? Like, if everyone has their instrument and only one forever, what is another tool for the their tool shed? What's another flavor? So we started look at everything, and the octave mandolin seemed like the thing. We had at that point hundreds of people that owned our instruments out there in the world, and we thought this would be a logical thing. Well, that happened, and we put it out, and it became very successful very quickly, so much so that we couldn't build enough instruments. And little by little, every time we release one of these things, the same thing happens, because the baseline continues to increase. It's not like we stopped making F5s, right? It's just, and it's not like the audience hasn't grown. I mean, I think that with things like, certainly like Tim and I was saying, and Sarah DeRose, and then people like Billy Strings and all these people that have unbelievable sized audiences, for the acoustic music to be right at the center of popular music. And I guess people would argue that's still, tiny compared to like a Taylor Swift or something like that. But it's bigger and more popular than it's been in like 100 years, or at least for the last 20 since Brother Waragda came out, right? So it just continues to grow. And you mentioned guitar players. That was another really big part of it. Is how do you get some people to come that direction? How do you create something that's maybe not as foreign or intimidating as the scrolls and points and all of the different things in an F5, and give them something where they can approach the mandolin, but in a register that they're used to, in a scale length that's closer to what they're used to, and give them something new and cool to play. In fact, last year at the summit, you probably saw we were going around with this whole Chaizuki thing where we were tuning octaves, and we still do that for people, like Chicago tuned guitars, only with an octave pair, like a bouzouki. So we take an octave, we turn it into something that a guitar player can play, in the first minute. You say, hey, play D chord, and you immediately can do it. All of that has really encouraged the interest in the octave mandolins. And so, yeah, it becomes a bigger and bigger part of what we do. In fact, here at the Michigan shop, that I'd say of anything that we do, that is our focus is the octave. It's the family of octave mandolins, including all the electric ones. And that's been really cool because now we have two shops that can make the same things or can make completely different instruments and work off of each other, and cover more ground, and just create more opportunities for new music.
Yeah.
I want always make it available.
Yeah.
And then see what happens. We've been very lucky with that.
I want to dig deeper into the breakdown of what gets done in China versus what gets done where you are now. But before we get to that, you mentioned at the very start of our conversation that you kind of started with the hardest thing, the F5, the mandolin that you see Chris Thiele and Bill Monroe playing, that style of mandolin. Starting there and then working your way to a 6-string archtop guitar, electric, is there some construction going on in that guitar that's sort of unorthodox compared to other guitars just because you came at it from the mandolin start?
Well, yes. I unorthodox is tricky because we are building it on the framework of how we build our mandolins, but we have utilized a lot of new new technology for us, new techniques that we are employing in these instruments that we've tried out first on mandolins, and then have sort of found that they better integrate into this instrument. So it's sort of unorthodox for us inside of the regular mandolin line, definitely. And in terms of other makers and what they're doing, there's probably some similarities in certain things, and then big differences. For example, like in 2020, when we really started looking at some new designs, when everything was shutting down, we were buying into other types of tech and software, and trying different things out. We bought multiple 3D printers to be able to make models of instruments in a way that we could physically, tangibly hold, not just 3D drawings. We're using a lot of CNC. We're doing other things in terms of spectrum and frequency analysis to tune our instruments. We are not shy on the tech side. This is not Geppetto's workshop. This is multiple people, multiple different angles, some of which are very technical. Those things I think might be unorthodox for other builders, but they have always been part of our sort of upbringing inside of the industry. We've always tried to consider replication as part of the importance in a product of development. So we're not making sort of one-off hand samples that we are going to have a hard time reproducing. And that is so that we can make changes more rapidly, and can make multiples of samples with various different tweaks. So these instruments, these guitars that we're talking about, they have familiar aesthetics in terms of the hardware have familiar aesthetics. The form factor is quite different. It's pulling on a lot of asymmetrical solid body electric designs, but put in a semi-hollow body format. I love the fun that electric guitar builders are having with offset and asymmetry style, body design. But for us, coming from the acoustic side, it makes sense to put that form in an archtop, instrument, in a hollow acoustic, style instrument. So that's been very interesting, and we've gotten deeply into vacuum forming for arching. We've got into things like 3D printing our like S hole, F hole, sound hole designs on these, and then figuring out how to carefully integrate them with the wooden framework of the body. We've gone sort of purposefully like with an acoustic style archtop, but blocked like a 335, and then with a bolt-on neck versus a glued and dovetailed thing, so that we can, like we've done with many instruments, make other available necks or stringings or various types of applications with the same body. That is something that we've done, like for instance on our mandolins, our mandolas, and our short scale octave mandolin, the wavelength, same body, same set of fixturing, different graduation, different shaping for tone bars. The recurve is different. Things that we can do it after the fact, but a way to be able to build more of the same body utilizing the same fixturing, and then make tweaks after, gives us a chance to build up inventory of white bodies, and then adapt to either what we want to build or what the market is demanding that we build. If we're super lucky, it's the same thing, and then we don't have no idea with something like a new like this, but there's a good chance that of all things, it made sense for us to be making a semi-hollow body electric. I see a lot of momentum in that area, kind of surveying the overall landscape.
I mean, it's super cool. I'm flattered you're bringing it. The shape of the actual body, given all the tech that you have, given all the sample sizes you can do, and some of the stuff that a lot of independent luthiers just would never be able to do. Is there a science to that body shape, or did it just look cool and then everything else kind of got backwards engineered there?
It's a little bit of both. There's the 2D, which is messing with shapes and so on, and looking at things like jaguars and firebirds and all these kinds of things where we see people having the most fun, where they're not so conventional. Coming from a F5 thing, right? You don't get to have a lot of fun with the form factor in terms of it's pretty tight and pretty conventional, and people aren't looking for. I hesitate to use the word Frankenstein, but they're not looking for you to really mess with things.
Yeah.
It's just kind of tethered to so much tradition. I'm not saying we're not going to bend the rules there too, but I think we will eventually bend the rules there as well, because it's just more fun. But so there was the 2D thing, and that, but then probably most significantly about these new instruments we're working on is trying to really blend the acoustic side and sensibility of a piezo and a magnetic source, and then doing that in a stereo way that you can either blend the sounds on board and or bring them to separate sources, amplifiers, and really have fun with that. And certainly the acoustic, so considering that, we definitely needed to consider the form and the construction of the instrument to achieve that, and try to get a very natural sounding when in that amplified acoustic sound. I sent you a video. You could hear, I think, what I'm talking about. It's one of those tricks where it's like wait a second, is that supposed to sound like that? Or am I the wrong, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it has a sound port, right? So does it sound pretty good just unplugged if you're just practicing at home?
Certainly, if you're practicing at home, it's not going to sound like an acoustic guitar, and it doesn't have that sort of volume, but certainly enough volume for you to get something out of it and play. But it is blocked where there's a block running down the. Is this video on, or did I just see you?
Most people listen, but we'll share some video too.
Well, I'll just pick one up just because.
So you've picked up the 2 pickup version. We got to talk about the electronics on it too.
Yeah, this is the 2 pickup version, and then there's a block running down the middle of this, much like a 335 or something like that style, where the bridge is anchored to, and of course the cavities for the pickups are routed out of. So there is a block that hangs about a half an inch down from the top, adds some mass. Also, creates a nice anchor for the block on the inside where the neck is joining. But it means that this top is not just totally free floating at like a flat top acoustic guitar would be. So it dampens the sound that way. But still the body, with it being hollow everywhere else, and where these ports are, and then the type of electronics that are in it, and then what you can do on board with those controls really allows for you to get, a very nice blend between acoustic and electric, or, piezo and magnetic sound, which is what came out of our whole experiment with our LE Octos, which are these, junior sized, chambered body spruce and maple octave mandolins with both piezo and magnetic in them. So it really is coming from first an electric octave mandolin design, and then into a more archtop guitar, electric archtop guitar format.
So does the one that has the blonde one that has one visible pickup, there's a second pickup under a piezo pickup underneath?
Blonde one, the biggest difference is this is a spruce top.
Yep.
Whereas this other one was maple top.
Yep.
Yes, this does have 2 pickups, and it has these are the Fralin mini humbuckers for the and the other one does as well for the neck pickup, and then it also has the a piezo underneath this ebony saddle, which runs down and out to a stereo jacks, so that you're able to blend both the output of the piezo with the magnetic and do it on board. So you get this really nice blend. And the stereo out means that you can EQ them separately. You can send into different sound sources, like different amplifiers. But the EQ function, I think, is the most important, because you do want to EQ a piezo, and especially dependent on your room or your amplifier that you're working with, and you don't necessarily want to EQ the mini humbucker the same way, right? So
Sure.
Having that split, but it does not require that you set up in stereo. It just gives you that extra that advantage, that option to be able to do that. But yeah, the combination of the spruce top and with the piezo versus the maple top with the onboard piezo and the 2 pickups.
So that's technically got 3 pickups. The maple, yeah.
On this one, basically, it's two magnetic, and then the selector switch for those, and then it has the onboard piezo here as well with the onboard volume control. And these will all be set up with multiple amplifiers and all sorts of goodie effects. Another thing that I encountered going to the Fretboard Summit so many years, all the amazing effects that everybody's got there. I've got multiple pedal boards put together and great amplifiers, the old vintage and new, that will be set up that you can kind of come, and play through. And we'll have Hayes there as well, Hayes Griffin from the video, and he'll be sitting in the booth the whole time, just playing and giving demonstrations. It should be a very fun wild weekend for this little mandolin company that's been coming to this guitar show.
Well, I hope you bring some mandolins too. There are always a
Oh,
couple
there
mandolin players.
tons of mandolins.
But I don't. This guitar kind of defies expectations. I want it to. I want to pigeonhole it maybe just inherently into like the jazz realm, but I see all these like a Fender Champ. I see all these Fenders behind you. So you've played this thing through a variety of amps with distortion and clean, and like, what's the sweet spot? Is it a jazz guitar? Is it a rock guitar? What is it?
No, so I don't think you can put it in one place, but you're right. I've got a lot of different amplifiers and a lot of different effects. And yeah, while I'm coming from the, say, electric jazz thing, it was always, I was coming from, you'd have to say, the more fusion side of things, where there was both a lot of electric and acoustic and a variety of different stringed instruments in there as well. Another thing about this instrument is that we have set it up and made it so that it feels much more like an acoustic guitar when you're playing it versus, super low action. Yeah. Let's shred on this thing. And it's heavier gauge strings are its sweet spot. And so, well, like that video I sent you, man, you sit down and flat pick on the thing and play that kind of music, play, fiddle tunes and add your effects and so on to the magnetic side, keep your acoustic side clean, and do the thing that many of these musicians, like Billy's and like other musicians are doing on stage with big amplified effects, but still be able to immediately switch it to that pure, more natural sounding acoustic sound, which I think opens up from everything from improvisational jazz and so on through Americana music and all the way over into heavier music, where you just switch off that piezo and just play. These humbuckers, man, are powerful and are just very thick sounding. The acoustic setup means that you can detune the instrument and keep it in tune, I think, better. There's not things like fingerboard binding and so on. So these are much more of those nice Gibson era, electric, where I feel like they feel more like what an acoustic guitar player is expecting when they pick up an electric versus electrics that just feel like foreign objects. And remember, we're bringing like what we know about mandolin players and octave mandolin players and so on to this. We don't want to neglect what we know about them. And they're playing with very heavy string tension, with heavy picks, and are trying to do things like tremolo picking and things that require exceptional dexterity and cross picking and that sort of thing. And we don't want to sacrifice all of that in making an instrument maybe that's just, much more, I'd say, exclusively electric. So really, I think it can span a ton of musical styles. I'll say this, coming to the Fretboard Journal, I have noticed, the Fretboard Summit, I have noticed this real pull towards warm sounding electric guitar, not heavily, overly distorted to where you can't tell naturally what the thing sounds like. Playing with things like tremolo, playing with things like atmospheric style reverb, things that accentuate more than just completely cover up or color the sound. And you've had all these very cool jam sessions at night where you get to hear a lot of people playing hollow body instruments. A lot of them are, and coloring them with effects in a way that it still upholds the integrity of what the thing is. I think it keeps in mind that this stuff did evolve from acoustic instruments first. Like, I don't know if I'll do it at the journal or at the summit, because there's a lot of hands and a lot of people and a lot of things to, the rooms to worry about. But the instruments that this is very, very much based on, I have examples, are, going all the way back to an ES 150.
Yeah.
And messing with that, like the first viable, successful electric guitar on the market, right? With a Charlie Christian pickup and everything. 335 from the first year, 58. And a mid 50s Les Paul Junior. And just the way that those, and then definitely many different flat top instruments that I've owned or own or have been lucky enough to play. It'd be really fun sometime if you could get here to show you all these instruments and show you this collection, because they do all have, there is something about all of them in these instruments. So we've always done that. I've always gone and got historic examples of really good examples to really base things off of and to really understand. But
and the neck block that goes all the way to the pickups, does that mean it's a quieter instrument with less feedback than some of these like classic jazz boxes you cited?
Definitely you can, right? You don't want to sacrifice the volume and consider that the venue is going to just be some quiet little combo with a tiny little amp where you can mitigate feedback easily. No, these things are ready to go in the middle of a stage like I'm talking about, with multiple amps and rigs and lots of instruments and lights adding hum and all sorts of things, you know? So yeah, I mean, and that's coming from a lot of direct experience, playing a lot of, maybe not gigs quite the size of the stadiums, people, but a lot of gigs with full rhythm sections.
Yeah.
And feedback is something to really consider. We've spent a lot of time thinking about that.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears for a second. Adrian, for somebody whose business relies on at least having some of your output come from China, you seem to have a remarkable smile on your face, and you've seem to be having some fun. How are you navigating tariffs? How are you navigating global and certainly domestic shifts and all sorts of things that affect business? Has it made you pivot what gets done? Yeah, I mean, we should actually maybe go back. Like, you've got some instruments that in the past have just been made in China, brought over here, set up by you guys, and then sent off to dealers and ready for prime time. You've also got some instruments, I think, where it's sort of like half gets made there, half gets made where you are in the States. Is that correct?
We have over the course.
Well, what's going on now, and where are you having to pivot or change what you do, and are you scared shitless, or you seem remarkably happy, so you're doing something right.
Well, a lot of the reason for the happiness is because we continue to explore new things, and we can push our own envelope past comfort zones, and that's very inspiring. And then we know so many incredible musicians that play our instruments, that have collaborated on projects. I mean, it's been overwhelming encouragement, and that definitely helps get you through whatever multiple governments can throw at you, and a lot of the nasty rhetoric that comes from a variety of places that tries to beat you up. Mm-hmm. But so, like, what's going on now? And the first thing about the company is I think people need to understand that we're really not inside of any normal convention when it comes to our international makeup. We, the instruments that come from our Qingdao shop, they come from our team at our Qingdao shop. And that is a company, a building, and a team we built from the ground up. This is not a sort of mystery shop. This is not somewhere we place orders and we haggle and so on. We build them, and in every single instrument that we have, that we continue to build, or ones that maybe we no longer make, we developed together as a team. It was either development at our place there with me there, or at our place here with both teams involved and flying back and forth and so on. It's an important distinction because many people are making instruments in China that do not have this kind of direct relationship. Sure, maybe they've bought from them for a long time. Maybe they have this kind of business relationship where they can place orders and receive instruments, and things like cost and lead time and so on, or the logistics of the international business, those terms that are always flying around every news report when it's talking about trade deals and everything. Sure, but that's not the same thing as like growing up with a group of people. When I went to China starting in 2002, that's when I started to really meet people and really get to know them. When I moved there in 2006, end of 2005, with my wife and our 18-month-old on a one-way ticket, I really put my whole thing, everything that I knew and everything that would come from it, into the hands of a group of people that are now like family. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that it would go that way, but my kids have grown up with these people. Our staff has come back and forth. These are family members, and so that's the first thing that people need to understand about Northfield is that the translation, the reason for the name, Northfield was the first music store that I ever fell in love with, and that's in Rochester, New York, in Schoen Place. Shout out to Joe, who gave me the idea. But Northfields are a place, like there's a Northfield in every state in the United States basically has a Northfield or a Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant's where I went to college, so pick Northfield because of the music store. And there's a direct translation. Beifang Yuan is the translation for the China side. And just every town, especially any agriculture, I'm in a very rural area here in Marshall, everywhere has a Northfield. Right? And that's why it's Northfield and not Bagale or whatever name that would end up on, right? And so that's an important distinction. I have worked alongside or for many companies that do business in China that do not have this kind of relationship. That's why we built it the way we did and built the building literally from the dirt. Yeah. Where we bought this plot of land and everything. Over the years, we worked in stages for how we would make instruments there. And at this point, both shops, both the Michigan shop and the Qingdao shop, can make instruments from start to finish. We don't need to build them in tandem. We can build them in tandem if we want to, because we have the drawings, the fixtures, the programs, et cetera, to make anything, anywhere. Not necessarily the brand new things like these guitars we haven't set up to develop, but like the Calhoun is a perfect example of something we developed for the China market, but then ended up, which that's a whole other tangent we could go down, because that's a thing that is very much a sleeping giant that a lot of people aren't talking about. But we developed it for there. It wasn't the right time, so we developed it here to send there, but we decided to do it here instead. It caught fire, and people really wanted these things, and we got to the point where we couldn't possibly make enough of them. So then we made them in both shops. Now we're just making them in the Qingdao shop. They're better. They're better instruments from that shop with our setup there than we could make here. And so what we did was shift into the octave mandolin world. And that's, this is such a big topic that you have to cut me off where I go astray. But how do we deal with the problems that we're facing? Well, having two shops and being able to mitigate tariffs, because, say, the octave mandolins are most popular in the United States. Therefore, we make them in the United States to supply to the audience directly, is a way to avoid things like, huge tariffs. At this moment, they are almost 40% and are likely to go up on August 12th or may stay the same. it's a big, big deal. But the only way we can balance it is to have the multiple, both shops making the right instruments that are more cost effective to build and ship. I mean, an octave mandolin is a big thing. It's a guitar-sized instrument. Drop shipping that, in it is very difficult and very, very costly. We don't send. This is another big difference. We don't send anything by ocean, with the exception of maybe cases that come from Germany, some of which come from China, that we have to send over with other things and then split off, piggyback a shipment from the West Coast over to Michigan where we are. So everything comes by air. This is another very big difference between the way we do it and the way almost every other, with the exception of some small violin makers that I know of, do work in and around Asia or in conjunction with whatever they're doing here in the States. So there are ways that we can play to our strengths. There are many things that you just can't get around. Things that come from other places in the world that just don't have anything to do with China. Things like, striped ebony or electronic components that are coming from other parts of the world. Cases, like I said, that are coming from Germany. Everything is affected, anything that we don't currently make. And there's nothing more really homegrown than taking a piece of wood, taking a tree down, cutting it into smaller pieces and building an acoustic instrument from it, varnished with Beatles shellac and alcohol that you get grain alcohol from, Indiana, and putting it together. And still the tuners, the fret wire, this, the copper or brass or all of the other components, the nickel silver that goes into, strings and so on, all coming from somewhere else, and we are not even close to the only ones dealing with this. I've read some very eloquently describe inside this industry. I just read JHS's the other day about how it's affecting them, and everything he said is exactly right, and it's exactly how we're faced with it. But you can't. The reason I started with my explanation of what we do in China and how we are in our relationship is you cannot take the humanity out of it. You cannot make it, the misnomer is to made in China, made in the United States, made in Europe, somewhere in Germany, et cetera. It's the people. It's the people, man. It's the hands and the eyes, the hearts, it's that makes these instruments. If you want to talk about machines and you want to talk about like what is happening in that regard too, and technology and so on, that you can go down this whole other way. And there's pluses and minuses, right? There's good and bad of all of it. But we keep our happy disposition, or at least I keep mine, by just staying engaged. And most importantly, listening to what kind of music is happening and moving in that direction, heading in the direction of what the players and the enthusiasts are telling you they want or they might want.
Yeah. Hearing you talk about how you split workload and move stuff around, like, you might be the only fretted instrument company that's cracked the code on where maybe your consumer doesn't even care which continent it got wrapped up in. They just want a Northfield because you're doing something unique. I mean, would you agree with that?
I don't know if we're the only. I do know that our business model is very different than just about 99% of people that I know. And I do want to believe what you just said is true, and that it's not made in China or made in the United States, but it's made by Northfield. That is what we are striving for. That is where we are trying to get to. I don't want to start making furniture or something like that. I want to stay within what what we believe to be our best work and our most passionate work. But yeah, I don't know if we've cracked any codes, but I do believe that people they have over the last decade definitely aligned themselves, or I don't know if that's the right way to put it. We have aligned and that they care less. I mean, it's still a question. There's still a lot of people that are very, very suspect and very concerned about the way we do things, and or the way anyone does anything that they can't see happening right in front of them. I think the DIY thing, while it's a huge proponent of acoustic music or instrument making, is also this sort of, I don't know, subtle backhand where the transparency is just over everything. And if they can't see it, then they're suspect. And so we do a lot. I mean, we write a lot on our website that tries to address how we work. In fact, there's a tab on our website. It is How Northfield Works. And it's the origin story of every single one of the instruments that we make, even if we made them one place and now we make them in the other shop, or we're making them in combination between the two shops. And I encourage people to check it out. And if we changed, then we update that, how it works. And it's by model, because it's like, what are we dealing with here? How many people are going to be able to listen to me talk this much about how we do what we do? Really, they just want to know, like, this F5 that they're looking at it, which one, which shop? We got to be able to say that. And we do. And then if people keep asking questions, then we look at that as engagement. And then we just try to redirect the conversation into, well, what is it that you're trying to do with this instrument after all? Like, what kind of music do you play? And maybe we can help you find the right instrument based on our own experience for that music or the variety of musics that you're playing. And yeah, let's get back to this, like, exchange about music and instruments and people, and less about like things that we have no control over and that are these hot button topics that just, everybody's instantly like insulted or confused by. It's
Well, you did something totally counterintuitive, however many, almost 20 years ago, that most instrument companies never dare to do, which is, it said Northfield on the headstock, regardless of where it came from. It wasn't the Epiphone line or the Squire line or the designation that means this came from Asia.
Yeah.
And now that you're having to move stuff around, it probably was the best decision you ever made, because, as you said, one of the instruments, the Chinese shop is able to do it even higher quality than you could.
No doubt. And, because at the point where we did our, I'd love to take full credit for that sort of accidental thing, but where I did it from was just that I can't put one you know what I mean? Like I can't put a person's name on this thing, because that wouldn't be, it's going to be a lot of people. And sort of, designating the lower level from I've fought really, really hard. I get actually at a point when we had the U.S. shop, really the Michigan shop, really going and making full instruments on purpose, by design. We made the least expensive instruments here in the United States and the most expensive instruments in China. And that was not pure marketing. That was because that shop in Qingdao was 8 years ahead in terms of our setup and our ability to develop products and to work seamlessly from the development stages through prototyping and so on. So much further ahead than Michigan shop, which was, they were veteran members in terms of their own experiences, and many of which I had worked with in other projects, like at Elderly Instruments, but they had never been part of a shop making instruments from scratch. I think one person of the entire team had that kind of experience. And so, we had to kind of, walk before run, even though the market was saying completely the opposite. It must be the highest level. It must be the most expensive, and et cetera. It was like, what sense does that make? People are the ones making these instruments. Some of them have higher skill than others. And the whole time we're talking about world class, how would that not involve China?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're talking about thousands of years of handcrafted, and many of these of the team members in the Qingdao shop coming from families with a lot of background in construction, in art, and duplication, just with a lot more experience, frankly, than many of the staff members on the Michigan team. And the products that have come out of the shops are meant to complement the whole lineup and complement each other as teammates, and present an opportunity for a shared experience among team members. Like, if we can be the ones in Michigan doing all these weird electrified instruments with the background that's taking us somewhere else entirely inside of the musical scope, then we can share that information with the team in Qingdao, and vice versa. If something is catching on there, the biggest market in the world for guitar players right now is China. It's the domestic market in China. It is what is happening with the millions and millions of guitar players there. And the trade shows that are happening, the magazines, the online, the social media, everything that is happening. And I'll tell you probably one very, very interesting accidental development in the whole creation of Northfield is that had we not set up a shop in Qingdao, had we not done everything we did to create an acoustic instrument culture, playing and making, we would not be participating in the market the way we are now. We would not have been able to, when people started talking about tariffs and everything, and now you're going to get into this trade deficit and all this, I'm just going to not touch it politically and just say that they have always existed on the import into China. They've always been there. And the best way to engage in that marketplace, and a roundabout, this is looking back at it, right? Whatever they call that, I'm struggling on the word, but in retrospect, it was the only way to participate the way we are participating now was to set up from a shop there. And we are seeing that with Northfield. We are seeing that with stuff with Shub, which I've talked to you about. It's incredible, the activity and the explosion in the market. And it is going to happen for the mandolin. It's taking a longer time. It will probably happen something like the way I got into the mandolin, which is I showed up to too many jams where every single person had a guitar.
Yeah.
I needed this sort of mandolin as a companion to guitar and singer-songwriting and so on is happening at an amazing pace in China right now. Now, just imagine if Northfield gets to participate in that from the ground up. And see that. It could be the biggest thing that happened for the mandolin in 100 years. Now, we didn't go in thinking that way, but we certainly are thinking that way now. And because we are experiencing it, that's not the kind of experience you get when you just have some straight up business relationship with a mystery factory that's just making your stuff cheap and you're putting it on a boat and bringing it over 1,000 at a time. That can't happen. You have to be there. You have to play around a campfire. You have to go to these concerts together. You got to figure out what works, and you got to learn some tunes in Chinese to be able to participate, which we've done, and that is probably the happiest accident. It hasn't even turned into what it will become. But I think in the next decade, that's what it'll be about. And maybe it'll, continue to be about this resurgence that we're seeing here too. But I think it'll be equal parts. And that's what fascinates me.
Yeah, I mean, that might be the most revelatory thing you've said in the hour we've been talking, because I think so many of us, you know, we've seen maybe some pictures of some high-end guitar stores in Japan, and we've heard about, you know, various things, but to actually picture all these guitar and fretted instrument enthusiasts in China growing, sitting around a campfire, buying instruments, like I don't think most of us even think about that. And you are on the front lines and have lived there. So what are they playing? How is it similar? I know you said mandolins, it's going to take them a while to warm up to, but like, how is it similar to when Americans think of their own music scenes, and how is it different? Are there some weird quirks over there in terms of like are they trying to play American bluegrass music? Like, what is it?
There's some of that.
Yeah.
There's some great bluegrass things happening in Shanghai, and there's some very cool like Mongolian singing and traditional American bluegrass music fusions happening.
Yeah.
Friend of ours, Tom Pung, has this cool group in Shanghai. They play multiple times a week, and what they're up to is there's a lot of expats, right? Shanghai's so there's some banjo players coming from the UK, and there's some there's just a hodgepodge of people playing different things, and then it just kind of turns into something. There's a lot of singer-songwriter stuff. The forms to the tunes are very westernized, I'd say. Like the form to a pop tune, or the form to a folk tune, where there's very obvious difference between the melody and the verse section and the chorus section, right? And then the way the formulas are put together to write those tunes. Some of them are more instrumentally minded, where they're featuring melodic traditional Chinese instruments or Western, fretted instruments and so on, as kind of part of the hook of the song. And others are straight up like, the Chinese Coldplay song, right? Even down to the enunciation, the phrasing of the vocals, and so on. Then there's the whole K-pop thing. So there's like the boy and girl band music things, but many of them have an acoustic guitar in the lineup, and are somewhere in between, Backstreet Boys and K-pop and so on. And then you've got this vast amount of traditional music that the guitar is kind of making its way into.
Mm-hmm.
You've got big electric, lots of heavy metal, also very big in South Korea and Japan. And there's a lot of similarities in the genres between those Asian countries, where they're sharing a lot of the same acts, a lot of the same tunes. The quirkiness comes from, sort of a lack of the same experience on the same timeline. We were having an amazing boom and revolution in both folk and rock and roll music as we know it, at the same time where they were like tamped down in a cultural revolution and not even allowed to play music, let alone have an instrument. And so you push everything off decades because of what that does. So then when things come back around to, okay, we can play music, regimes change and so on. Now you're catching up for lost time, and you're connected directly to the same internet that everyone else is connected to. And so current music form and everything, it just sort of leapfrogs. Like if we started with folk music in the 60s and we were just having this huge boom in it, it's going to be a while before it gets all the way back to sort of that style of music. They're going to have leapfrogged all the way through these contemporary forms, and then it will take, that resurgence will come from people looking backwards. Right now, there's not a lot of looking backwards. It's looking forward. And so when you introduce something like a bluegrass, a fireside exchange that way, what we're thinking of is the only thing making any noise is the musician sharing their tune. Maybe there's multiple voices and the crackling of the fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
It changes when you plug stuff in.
Yeah.
But they plug stuff in, even around the campfire. So it's like, that's what I mean by the leapfrog. It's like we didn't go right there because, we had this sort of progression into what is now this massive stage on a bluegrass concert and the lights and the whole thing, right? But and we sort of evolved slower.
Yeah.
They've been in this hurry up, straightforward, pushed into, being current without looking back. And that adds, there's some unfamiliarity for us in that, but it's funny in a way because if you can recognize it that way, a purist who might just be offended by it. But then again, like you said a second ago, they don't have those experiences. So what would they know to do with seeing people pick around a fire plugged in with a light on and so on? They just think, because they know something else. But they're
yeah, and how cool for a brand like yours where they probably don't have the bias that at least some really traditional North American bass players do, where if it doesn't say Martin on the headstock or they don't even, there's not a format they're trying to fill because that's what their hero did. They're kind of starting from scratch.
That is the we are kind of, like I said, we're not clean slate or anything.
Yeah.
Bringing everything of all this notion and all this context from our own histories into it. But yeah, when you get to that point and you say there's no wrong answers here, like let's work with the way that it is, and maybe we can influence in a way to where we can create a platform where there's more to exchange. Like if we do teach some of our own tunes, it just means that when we go and hang out every year, we can pick some tunes together.
Sure.
But you got to be willing to learn their tunes too, which we are. And a lot of our audience has taken this ride with us and are willing to hitch their trailer to this idea that, like, we're not saying we're the authority. We are not saying we know better. We're just saying we know differently. And that it could be a fun ride. Like, we're not threatened and we're not angry. We're not even angry at the people that'll hate us no matter what we do because of our relationships. But, hey, it's all good when we're sitting around a fire picking and everything just normalizes when you do that. Just comes right back to the people sitting around a fire that you're picking with. I wish more people could have that experience. And I wish that was the story being told about this relationship between the trade is really about the people that have these relationships together. It's not. Right. We just tend to focus on the theft and
it's good or bad.
All that stuff. It is just the bad sells, I guess, better than the feel good stories. We live to feel good, so.
Given I don't know if you're willing to share numbers, but given your unique position and everything we just talked about for, let's just say North America versus China, because I'm just curious, like for every 5 Northfield instruments that you sell in North America, how many are you making that get sold to China? Is it a pretty big chunk?
No. I mean, as far as instruments, the U.S. market is the biggest.
Okay.
It would be, so we sell our instruments in about, I think it's 10 countries if we include China. And the US is by far the biggest market, in regardless of what it is, octave mandolin, F5 mandolin, and so on. And we work with few handfuls of specialty retailers around, and I'm sure we know all the same shops. I'm sure they all sell the magazine.
Yeah.
But the U.S. is is still the biggest. I'd say after that, it would be Europe. We sell UK and the EU. We sell in Ireland, England, Switzerland, Germany, and those are the biggest ones. And then we do lots of direct selling to people all over Scandinavia, all over Italy, and so on. That's still, as a group, probably certainly the second biggest. And we also sell to China. To Japan. We've done some stuff in South Korea. I'd say China is bigger than Japan now, which is not the way it was. And there's been a lot of bluegrass and a lot of acoustic in Japan for a long time. So it is definitely cooled down there in Japan, and while China's heating up. In terms of numbers, I don't know them exactly. I would say that probably 15 to 20% of our instruments that we're making are selling in that market over in China, with the rest being here. In terms of production and stuff, because you didn't ask this, but lots of people always ask, what instruments are we making in each place and what's the rate, and so on. The F5 mandolin is still sort of the flagship of what we do, and we make a lot of varieties of it. And virtually all of them at this point are made in the Qingdao shop. We do make a few different varieties in Michigan, but right now we're not making them. We're making more octaves, and we're experimenting with these guitars and stuff. We made it. A few hundred instruments last year, more like 400 instruments, maybe more, actually. About 150 to 200 of those instruments were made in Michigan, remaining China, in the Qingdao shop. So that may change as things change. Certainly, it's much more balanced in a way this year, because for the end of March, all of April, and portions of May, we didn't ship anything into the United States from China when the whole thing was like 145% and things were going crazy. We just said no, we stopped. We didn't stop making anything. In fact, we built up a really nice inventory of instruments, and then we utilized that marketplace for some of them and just held on to the rest, knowing that once we got them done, we'd be able to figure out shipping, tariff pricing, and so on. And we try to make up for it on this side in terms of what we were making. I don't know how much making up for it I've succeeded in doing with growing weird ass projects like but we've also needed that, because otherwise it just gets into this narrow mathematical focus that, like I said, I'm reluctant when it comes to that. And I pay a lot of attention to it. I'm not going to say I don't. I have to, right? That's the stuff that I'll do in the early morning hours before I get my creative stride for the day. And spreadsheets, we all have them, right? Business owners live and die by spreadsheets. But we've managed to keep the spirit, keep our chin up, and still create. And realize that we have a lot of flexibility and a lot of really great contingencies built into our model that afford us that versatility, that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of companies do not. I'm very happy. It is definitely made for a juggling act for a couple decades here, but I'm glad we have it, or else we could be in a much more dire situation. And have the ability to make all of these instruments here, we could be in trouble.
Yeah.
And many of our contemporaries are in trouble.
Yeah. Speaking of juggling, you mentioned very quickly, and then we kind of moved on, Shub Capos. What's your role there, and what's that looking like?
So this is a whole other podcast of the Shub Capos. But I have been very involved with Shub Capos for almost the entire time that Northfield has existed. I'm letting a cat out of the bag here, but you've done, so why not? Right? Yeah, I am officially. I'm Rick Shub's business partner, and we have a couple of different divisions of that, and we are very active in more than 40 countries. And you know, the Shub brand celebrated its 50th anniversary last year, and it at the outset it was about. I've got this thing about having many baskets.
Yeah.
Got this thing about needing many different directions to stimulate whichever one it is on the day that I'm in. So it started as a way to really help a friend and stay in touch with a side of the business that was so much bigger than the little tiny thing I was trying to grow from nothing. Um, and keep me very involved in the industry at large, going to the shows and so on, traveling around the world, meeting with distributors and so on. It was a way to scale my experience that I had learned through all these millions of different, it seemed, you know, probably hundreds of projects that I had done. Um, and it started just as basically designing with Rick and sort of reverse engineering and producing parts and so on. And then little by little, I stepped closer to, you know, into the marketing and new designs. At this point, I kind of run with multiple teams in different places. Now that this is Michigan, California, and Qingdao, the kind of the scope of what Shub International and Shub Capos USA is. And all I can say is that, like the mandolin um, sort of popularity in the world, the capo category is wild and expansive, and is tied directly to music making that is happening globally. Now, that's the most interesting thing about something like Shub, is that, you know, I could be working on a very specific market in Finland, something that's going on in Estonia, or something that's like explosively popular in China, and then reverse engineer the excitement to inform what it is that we should be working on the Northfield side. And that is how it has worked, very symbiotically. Vice versa, the popularity of the octave mandolins, and boy, we need some capos that really work great with these specific radiuses on an octave mandolin for players in Scandinavia, players in Canada, players, you know, doing, you know, stuff in France and so on, that are different from what we're doing in the United States. It's just, like I said, it's like scalable experience that really helpful. It is very helpful to inform certain parts of the industry and how we might utilize them in instrument development, or in communication. We're doing this giveaway. It's actually the last day of it, where we, for the very first time, sort of collaborated with the two brands to give away one of our Ars Top acoustic guitars, the Rival, and this thing. This probably people probably won't hear it, but
yeah.
But anyways, that was the first step in that direction, to try to you know, kind of collaborate on the audiences. And you know, so I don't know if that answers your question. What does it look like? It's like the other part of my brain, but it's still the same part of my brain, just kind of like, you know, one other segment of it. And it's a daily thing. It's I'm not short on projects.
No, I was going to say, you got employees 12 hours ahead. You've got employees in your office. Like, I don't know how you sleep. Like, you've got too many projects going on, but
I don't. No. I do sleep, but yeah, the time zone game is something I've gotten very used to for quite a long time now. But yeah, it's a lot of juggling, but it's incredible perspective. And people are just vastly different from different parts of the world, thinking about different things. If you spend the time to sort of dig in, you can learn so much.
Yeah.
And it's fun to have multiple things that have these like different paths, and realize how they inform the other. It's really beneficial for the team too, because you think about it, like, okay, so we go to we see each other at the NAMM show every year. We always see each other at the Shove booth or in the hallway, right? Because we bring a Northfield booth there because we already have as many dealers as we can really handle. So I get it. I've been going forever. The first NAMM show I went to was in 1995, which I just realized is 30 years ago, which is nuts. So I'm really not that old, but like not going to this show keeps like young people coming into the industry. Like, we have several young people at Northfield here in Michigan that wouldn't get that purview any other way than to go to something like crazy Anaheim and see like, whoa, I'm part of like a much bigger thing than I realized. And so by having that side and using the team from Michigan to go to the booth, they get that exposure. They're part of a much bigger thing just by connection. And it informs what they do at Northfield. And it makes for a bigger scope, bigger thinkers inside of a smaller thing, which is why we're always pushing on, development or tech or different ways of communicating and so on, because it's feeding that. And so I'm very grateful. And I know they are too, because otherwise, they might not get to go. I'd go, but so what? I've been here 30 years, they get to go. They're like 26 and 28-year-olds getting their minds, their heads is kind of blown off once a year. And then they'll go down to Sweetwater and do like a trade show for Guitar Fest and see that and just go like, whoa. So these are really, they inform each other, and it's very helpful. And it was not entirely by design, but it has worked that way, like most everything that I've gotten involved in.
Yeah, your curiosity and your willingness to take chances is so admirable. And I got to say, I thought we were going to have a chat to tease a couple of guitars you were showcasing at the summit, and you gave us so much food for thought on the music industry and musicians around the world and so much more. So I can't thank you enough.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. I hope I didn't, edit as necessary.
We never do.
Well, then I'm sorry. I'll apologize now to the listener. If you can get through, 45 of this, whatever, 90 minutes, I'm impressed. I thank you very much.
All right, that was my chat with Adrian Bagale of Northfield Mandolins, and now guitars, I guess. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, please come see us at the Fretboard Summit, fretboardsummit.org. It starts August 21st in Chicago. And I'll take your feedback, as always, podcast at fretboardjournal.com. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts.